Hello,
Give a little sound
one, two,
test
one,
check
two.
again.
Sound
It's
test.
always funny whenever we do this too, because you can tell the people who aren't gamers, the people who are, because the gamers are like, you are synced. Like there is no gap between when I say go.
Oh, the click is really quick.
But then you have people that like they probably only play turn-based RPGs, and like you are way off. Like it takes
It's
me
my
like
turn
20
to click
minutes
go.
of shit.
Oh my god.
That's actually
Also,
really
while I have us recording KBash, I have a question for you. Do you or do you not stan the term mushrusy?
Oh my god. Look. One time. Okay. Mushroosy's a funny word. I had to say the funny word. I could have called attention to the mushroom like bara chested version of, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about because I literally was watching your video this morning, just getting all hyped up. I'm like, I cannot let you go on this. So KBash did a video of all of the Vanillaware side-scrolling action RPG games, and you were doing Odin Sphere.
It's all coming to making sense now.
Definitely said the word mushrusy on there. I'm like, that is the funniest thing that I've ever heard in my entire life.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. What a way to start the day. Hey gamers! I grew up never wanting to go outside until I needed to in order to play and beat Boktai. It's me, Jason.
Paint me like one of George Kamatani's girls. I'm KBash.
And I'm the carpal tunnel you inevitably got after years and years of handheld gaming. It's me, Patrick. Welcome to another episode of RPGaymer Season 4, Episode 1, a podcast about the Game Boy Advanced.
Okay, real talk though, I still have like carpal tunnel, like I still feel it, and not just from Game Boy, just from games in general. And I'm like, fuck, I'm getting old. Like
It's
kind of
for me, literally, it is just handheld gaming.
But that's like all it is
gets
now.
me.
I mean, like
Really?
Switch, Steam Deck,
'cause
Game Boy. Yeah,
the SP was like you were like this. Like I
guess
was a
so.
basketball player.
The
I have
clam,
big
yeah.
hands, so I was like this.
Maybe
yeah.
I just have little baby hands or something.
well, aren't
So
you a
it's like
baby? Aren't you like
perfect
22 years
for
old?
Whittle
I,
K-Bash.
I'm like crawling out of bed. I'm 31. Like, the sun. I no longer feel the sun. But no, nowadays for me, Kingdom Hearts, God of War, the mashy type stuff really does it for me. Like the handheld is not as bad, but I get it. If you have big hands.
If we're gonna mini podcast about being old, I agree. And I was doing my streams last year, and some games I physically had to stop playing because I'm just hitting X so much, and it hurts so much.
Yeah, people don't get it.
People don't get it, man. These young kids these days.
Truly, everything is so ergonomic now.
Exactly.
But speaking of not ergonomic things, here we are back for season 4, and we're talking about what I think is probably one of the best systems ever made. Fight me, I don't care. But we have our Game Boy Advance specialist on deck. KBash is here for our season premiere. Welcome back, KBash. We are so happy to have you.
Glad to be back. That's right. One of the few gaming YouTubers left who will talk about a Game Boy Advance game.
Truly.
Listen out, man.
For real. It's I love this console so much.
Yeah. I do kind of feel like the three of us, and I know we joke that KBash, you're so much younger, but you're kind of in the same age group. But it really landed like right at the right time to resonate with me, and I'm assuming with the two of you, like perfectly. And everyone will have that console, and I think for us, and I'm sure millions of others, it really does hit that sweet spot.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really good place for us to start. Let's talk about what was your introduction to the GBA. Like, when did it land for you? When did you pick up? What were your feelings or any stories that you have? Because I know, not that much of an age gap, but I'm curious if we all kind of got it at the same time.
I think I remember my mom bought it for me with my money, but she like went out and got it because I remember getting it when I got home from school. And correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't a solid lineup. I can't remember of original games because I know the first game I got was Mario Brothers.
It was like Mario 2,
yeah,
and Circle of the Moon.
Yes.
And maybe I'm with you there. Yeah, there weren't too many games that came out immediately.
We'll get to Circle of the Moon. But I remember getting it and coming home and being like, this is so amazing because it was the first like handheld console that was uniquely mine and not my brother's. And so it was really cool to have that first one. And I had already grown up, enjoying Pokemon and playing Super Nintendo, N64. So I was like, this is the next step. And it was just so exciting to have that. It was awesome. I want to say it had to be launch day. Like, I don't know when specifically that was, but I know like the day it came out, I'm like, Mom, we got to get it. Nintendo Power is telling me I need to own this console. And so
it comes out around your birthday, so that's
it was definitely the summertime, or at least late in spring.
Actually, it was June 11th, 2001.
There you go, Patrick coming through with the win.
Well, I have a story for it, but we'll get to.
Good.
How about you, KBash? Where'd you land on the GBA spectrum?
Like the very tiny zoomer I am, I didn't get a Game Boy Advance until the SP was released, me and my two brothers got it at the same time. Like, each got our own console.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
There are other bashes.
Yes. So
there's KBash and KBash. Yeah.
Well, there is a KBash. KBash lore. I'm a triplet fraternal, so we look different. Both of them are much more muscular, or historically were more muscular than me. In case you wanted to have something to think about later.
Muscle bash.
That's what I'm sorry. But yeah, and it was, you got your little Game Boy, got your private experience with Pokemon, and it was great. It was fantastic. At the time, we were upgrading from Game Boy Colors and didn't have a Nintendo 64 or anything. So it was important.
What about you, Patrick? What's yours? What's your June 11th story?
Time travel back to a baby Patrick in June of 2001 who did not receive a birthday gift on his birthday that year because he specifically asked if he could get the Glacier Game Boy Advanced and could not be a happier boy, even though, as we said, not many games came out. I don't even think I got a game when...
Just the see-through console was cool enough.
Oh yeah, I mean, first of all, it's beautiful, but second of all, I remember specifically the first game I played on it was Dragon Quest 3. And how happy I was that it was just that much easier to see the screen, because the screen was you can't see my hands on stream, but that much wider. You know what I mean? It was just wide enough. And then 3 months later, actually right when I moved to Indiana from Canada, my dog bitch slapped my Game Boy out of my hands and broke it. Broke the screen.
You're gonna pet me
And
now.
I remember going to my mom and being like crying as a 15-year-old, will you please fix this for me? I'm not saying we need a new one. They're like, no, honey. But eventually, after months of being a sad boy, they did send it out and it got fixed. And
nice.
That was a good moment when it came back, because it came back in time for a bunch more releases. So maybe it was better that way to have it not have it until there were more things to pick up.
I'm just still trying to wrap my head around thinking when I was a child I could defer my birthday gifts for later gifts. I never thought about that.
Well, I mean,
the utility.
Jason and I have a birthday around the same
exactly.
time.
Look at that value.
So for me, for this game, it was easy to be I have a game coming out or a system coming out in a couple of weeks. Can we just wait? I was very wise. I knew I was never going to get much, so I had to strategize. And be
with what I was going to get.
Don't get me anything for Christmas or birthday this year, but next year when the PlayStation comes out, that is what you were getting me. And they'd
Perfect.
be like, okay, we can make that work.
Damn.
So
okay.
Yeah, math. Okay, so we're already gushing already, and I can see it spilling out already. So I kind of thought of a little fun thing that we could do, and I just with your thoughts of this system, if you had to describe it in one word, or as few words as possible, what word would you use? So, KBash, I kind of want to start with you, because I feel like you are obviously the most poetic of the three of us.
Pressure's on.
We'll give you your space. But what word would you use to describe this wonderful system?
To disappoint you immediately, the word is peak. In case you were honestly wondering, but
Zoomer, get the Zoomer.
But I wrote down innovative for a reason. Specific. I don't know if I should even dive into this right now, but
dive in,
take the dive.
Wherever the flow is. Yeah, go
it was
with the flow.
It was just seeing how companies at that time who were increasingly developing 3D tech and all these incredible mind-blowing graphics on the PS1 or whatever, mind-boggling effects, and it's little goober skeletons, were then forced to bit crush these experiences down into consumable products for children effectively. That was the main market, not necessarily, but and we see a lot of innovation out of the console because of that, I think. Yeah.
That's solid.
Well, what was well said, Jason. How about you? What word are you tossing in here?
I mean, I want to just throw in advance. I think that'd be kind of funny, but I'm not gonna do that. The cheapo. I'm glad you gave the caveat for multiple words, because I feel like the way I want to put it in there is Super Nintendo or just SNES as my one word cheap example. I feel like it was again the right time, right place for me, but like having a portable console that essentially was a beefed up Super Nintendo was absolutely amazing, that I could take with me to school at the time I was playing sports and stuff, so I needed it for like, car rides to meets and practice and stuff. It was pretty amazing. And seeing like I actually did not have a Game Boy Color. Of all the consoles Jason owns, I never owned a Game Boy Color. And so jumping from the original yellow Game Boy to this amazing Game Boy Advance was incredible. So seeing that jump was amazing, and knowing like, okay, I can get these experiences from the Super Nintendo on my Game Boy Advance was really great. And to further tie it to SNES, why I would say that, I want to say it's the first time I at least saw a lot of quality games making a dual release, or like something will come out. Here's Super Mario Kart, and now here's Mario Kart Super Circuit. Is that what it's called? Like on Game Boy Advance,
or
like
a double. No, I think you're right. I think it's Super Circuit.
Yeah, and then like, Metroid and Mario games, like they started to release on both, or you saw sequels exclusive to Game Boy Advance. And then to KBash's point, they weren't N64 games. They were basically sequels to the Super Nintendo. Right. And I love that. I thought it was super duper great.
But how about you, Patrick?
No, fuck you.
I know, Jason, you said I'm not going to use the word advanced, so I just basically used a synonym and just went with evolution. Yeah. But truly, especially having a Game Boy Color, to me, this was when I think handheld games became so much more. So you could talk about like the upward trajectory of handhelds in general, but I feel like this is when it truly felt like this was a system that people wanted to own. And I think it's for the reasons that you both said, like Jason talking about it being like your portable Super Nintendo. Now we have games that are like quality, we have depth, and I just really like gravitated toward that because you kind of think about those games that came before, and they really they really weren't much. Like there wasn't a lot going on in Pokemon in like before this, because they just didn't have the space to put it on that cartridge. But now all of a sudden, like peak, like just peak so much more. It's truly it's true. So Jason, maybe this doesn't matter as much to you, but like, were there any other things? Because you said, well, I guess if you had the original Game Boy, KBash, did you have anything before the Game Boy Advance, or was this your first handheld?
Game Boy Color previous. That's it. Yeah,
you did. Okay. Was there anything else beyond like the size of the space, like data wise, that like you noticed that made it better than its predecessors?
That's a good question. I'm actually not sure that I other than the size, no. Sorry, you mean like
this could be hardware or software?
You mean compared to the Game Boy Color? Or
yeah.
I mean the backlit screen, like sorry, because I had the SP, so it was like because I had the when I played Game Boy Color, had the little stupid plug-in with the light, so you could go on the car trip and actually see. Most of my eyes.
We all had those, right?
Right, and then suddenly that wasn't an issue anymore. Oh my god!
I will say that is a benefit of the SP over the GBA, which I did have both. Like when the SP came out, it was that's what I traded in for. But like that is revolutionary in itself, because now you could stay up as long as you wanted. Your parents could never catch you playing games
underneath the sheets.
Yeah, but software wise, I don't actually want to throw the GBA too much of a bone. Because I don't want to devalue what the Color was doing also. Like, there were times where you would play a bad GBA game and go like, oh man, this looks like hideous compared to like some of the cleaner stuff from like Nintendo's software development team or whatever. Exactly. That's all.
I can agree with that too. I feel like as I write more about games now, and I'm still playing like older retro games, and I'm getting older and they're getting older. I think when you look back, this is still the era where some games were just like one trick ponies, if you will. Like it emulated an arcade experience to play like I'm gonna date myself, like Kicks or something like that, and you could play it on Game Boy, and it's like here's the one thing you're gonna enjoy it for 20 minutes and that's it. And then you started in the Game Boy era to get like inklings of these bigger games. So Link's Awakening, for example, Pokemon, like they did more. They were more quote games, and I feel like you saw more of that with the Game Boy Advance. There was still, of course, like shovelware and ports and stuff like that you wouldn't you kind of get that as a filler. But I feel like you started to see a lot more of that quality come through, and I think that's why the Game Boy Advance holds a high regard. And Patrick, you said it's one of the best. I agree. I think that's why, because it has games that are actually games that utilize the console well, and they are fun to play portably as adults and as kids.
Yeah, Jason and I did an episode 0 before we started doing the podcast. That was just a test of it was just a test to get ready for like doing all the RPGaymer stuff. Which was funny because when we talked, it was kind of like a turn-based battle. It was very like you go and now I go. But
there's my words.
Oh, God.
we didn't know what to do, so we were like, why don't we just compare two systems? And we just gush, and we both wanted to fight over the GBA because it was the one that we were gonna both choose of like one of our favorite systems. But I relented just to make it easy, and like I chose the 3DS instead. But it's just funny, like we're here full circle finally talking about like this magical system.
It took 3 years to get back to it. It's kind of crazy.
Seriously. I guess so. Maybe let's talk a little bit more about and this could be the GBA or the SP. It doesn't matter because Jason, did you have an SP as well? Did you eventually get one?
I did, but it was like post. It was like in the 3DS era. I finally got an SP. And did I play
so
it?
it's not really. It's more
it.
something you collected than you.
Yeah,
Did you get mine? Did you buy mine?
No, actually, I got Laura's. Like I got hers, and then my brother had his extra one. He didn't want it, so I bought it off him.
I want to know, like, how did you just feel about the design of the system? And like, jokes aside or no jokes aside, I'm not kidding. Like the SP is what gave me carpal tunnel. I had never had like terrible hand sensations before playing that system. But I will say on the flip side, and we brought this up at the beginning too, like the Glacier GBA is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire like video game system wise. Like there is just something so sleek about that game, of that system. Like damn, it's I'm coming right now. Like
it was just before before you said like console, like qualified it with consoles. I was like, yo, fuck the Sunset. I got the Glacier GBA. God bless.
That's good.
So for you guys, how does that stand out for the actual design?
I can go first on it. I think having only really played the GBA normal vanilla GBA, I guess, like when it first came out, I kind of thought it was a little endearing that it didn't have the backlight, like to still like sit there and you feel kind of like a kid. I remember sitting in the corner playing Castlevania like with the light the right way, like as my parents were watching the news or something. Like it was really fun, and I think finding the time to play it was great. And then like just knowing that I'm starting to finally get this great experience only with really 4 buttons, like, and it felt really solid. When I did eventually play the SP, I thought, okay, backlight's clearly the way to go. Like, this is absolutely like the right way to play the game. But I agree that is not a greatly designed system. If I actually would compare it to any systems that Nintendo made, I think it might be the second worst overall design system, next to maybe the Virtual Boy, which I have right over there. And it is not a fun system to play on. So the Game Boy Advance SP is wonderful for what it is, but it is very small. Fair. I think they compensated too much of hand size to make it portable for the clamshell design, right, which they renovated and did way better for the DS. So maybe, the GBA SP gave us cramps so the DS could fly. Like, that's kind of how I would take it.
Yeah. I like all criticism of the SP's design is legitimate. It's just funny because like I must have been like so starved for like gaming and sitting alone in like scoliosis stuff, like a shrimp playing my like things alone. Because like I think that was the first system I ever put 300 hours into a video game, which is like that's deranged, but whatever.
What game was that?
Yeah, I'm so curious.
It was Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If it was like Mario Kart, I'd be like, why are you?
Yeah. Why are you doing this to yourself? Yeah, that's funny. But
what about you, Patrick? What would you say?
So, like, did the GBA like OG needed batteries, right?
Yeah. They both did, I think.
So
the second one charged. Yeah, the second one charged.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that was incredible for me was the having just something to recharge, because I no longer had to like stalk my parents to buy me batteries. Which I mean, like, is something that kids now, will never have to know the woes of. Like,
what's a battery?
We used to literally driving from Indiana to Canada, 8-hour drive all the time to get to like my hometown, and there was always a guaranteed stop on
batteries.
The way to get new batteries. And like I know my parents did it begrudgingly, but they also knew that it would like keep me quiet on the trip, so why not? So when the SB came out, like eventually that was just a win in itself. And I know it is smaller too, but the fact that backlit is huge. Because there were some GBA games that like on the standard you couldn't see unless you had the perfect lighting. Like I remember when Golden Sun came out, and there were times where I couldn't see the overworld map. Like you couldn't be in the back of the car and really see what was going on. So the backlit was a big win. And just it being flippable again, like for no reason should a screen be exposed all the time. Like it could be an easy liability. I don't think they made screens as resilient
as they do
then
today.
As they do now. Like, I don't know the number of times that I've dropped my Switch, and like she dirty, but she fine. Like she will survive. But like I said earlier, my Glacier did not survive like one attack from my dog, and like that is such a bummer. But like, so finally getting that enclosed system, like it was so neat how it was just so compact, like just to become this little square of a thing. It's just like, oh, you're so cute, I love you, my baby.
That's right.
I also think that go ahead.
I just like that. I wanted to add that it was the ultimate independent console. Like you charged it, you had access to lighting, you no longer needed peripherals or any nonsense, and had it all yourself. It was and it was very tiny. It's just screwing up people's hands. That's all.
Because those light things for like the Game Boy Color and original Game Boy, they were also like magnifiers too, weren't they?
Yeah, some of them were. We had one.
Which is just it's so crazy to think about. Like we used to have these things that we needed in order just to play a game. Like I remember playing like Lufia, was it Rise of the Sinistrals or whatever, the one on the Game Boy Color, The Legend Returns, and just like the tiniest game, but then you have that one thing that just like magnifies the shit out of it. You're like, I can see this game now. We're good.
So now you can see all 8 pixels really, really clearly.
Really clearly.
I also want to say something else I liked about the design of the Game Boy Advance SP specifically, but it happened before, but bringing it back to like collector's circles, I think this is the first time we saw a lot of special editions come out that were like actually worthwhile, not just here's your Glacier, here's black, here's pink, but here's the Legend of Zelda version, like here's the Pokemon version, and like they were legit really cool, and I felt like it made being a gamer in the early 2000s pretty neat, because you could show like your style, what you wanted. Like I also loved my Glacier style. Like I thought that was really cool because I also loved see-through phones when I was in the 90s. But like having the one that was the Minish Cap, I think is what it was, with the Triforce, or Pikachu's face is still, even today, is still very popular for collectors. So having it back then to showcase, this is what I love to do, this is what I like about games, and then you could have other people just see that was really, really fun. I love that part.
I love how for you it was like this was something cool, where I literally had one girl on the bus because I had like the Game Boy Color Pokemon Yellow say to me like, that's not your Game Boy, is it? Like you still play Pokemon? And I was like, no, it's my little brother's.
I'm leveling up for him.
I don't have a little brother.
That's good.
So good for you that was something that you felt like you could relish in. But for me it was like, oh, don't beat me up.
Feel it.
Well, I think that's a good like pivot from the system itself, because I mean, like, all systems are gonna have their ups and downs, and I think for this one, aside, like mostly it was just a win. But we gotta talk about the games, and I think specifically, I just kind of want to talk in general. Jason, you referred to this as a portable Super Nintendo. I hadn't even heard that, and that was something that I said as a kid too. I guess I want to know for you guys, in what ways do you think game design was different on the system from anything that we had seen before, whether that be handheld or like TV console? I think finally, and this is kind of what I tanged tangent touched on when I was talking about like this is like we kind of saw the evolution of games and the sophistication kind of was built in a lot more. I think we started to see games get a lot more experimental because you guys brought up Boktai, which I think was really great, where we had like even things that were just hardware elements coming in that kind of played into the game. And I think the only game that was like that I can think of before that might have been Kirby's Tilt and Tumble on the Game Boy Color. You know, so like I think we started to see, I just think, a lot more joy in design. Like that is a joyous system. Like a lot of the video games that were coming out, there was a lot of love that went into this design, and they didn't feel like games for the sake of games. And I think that's kind of like the biggest thing for me here is that, like, you know, there's something about games now where they just don't have that. It doesn't make you light up when you say, you know, I'm going to play this game. It's almost like some games now are just like defunct of joy. So I think that was kind of what it is for me, where like was just a very joyous time in gaming, and I don't know why that is, but like there's just something special. KBash, what were you gonna say?
I do, because looking at the games, it is interesting. The entire catalog. We see Nintendo trying out like a ton of different things, or greenlighting like plenty of, publishing a ton of studios and other people, because it's a quick turnaround market compared to like major console things. Getting experimental, but specifically, you get games that are from franchises that are traditionally for adults, again, brought down to the kid level, but that's not always true. Sometimes it's the reverse. In fact, so for the kid thing, take a game like Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced, where like literally like take a very serious political dramatic story and just
throw in snowballs,
right, and reduce it to this weird, like, I love that game, and whatever, I have critiques, this or that, who gives it doesn't matter, but it's a fascinating game regardless. But then you get games like Mega Man Zero, which is just straight up will kill you 1,000 times until you memorize. And it's like, this isn't Mega Man X. Like, this is like Mega Man for sickos. What are you doing?
That's I think that's a good point you're hitting on there too. Like, not that games before this weren't difficult, but like we started to see some like relatively difficult games. This was the first time Fire Emblem was coming into the mix in the West, which you could paint as Kitty, but it is a game where if a character dies, like they
right,
like, there are no Phoenix Downs, there's nothing to bring them back, which is not really something that we saw before. So I definitely want to get into the throes of digging deeper into some specific games, but I just these general thoughts I think are good.
I got one more general thought, and I referenced it a bit earlier, but playing, like, it's a portable console, and I think knowing the games started to come out that knew that, so they lent themselves, in my opinion, kind of well to multiplayer, especially just on the go. Granted, you need to have that crazy ass link cable, but I still have 4 of them. Having those was fun, and I think that there was a lot of unique multiplayer aspects because you no longer needed to share a screen. And that was pretty cool. And granted, I mean, the Game Boy Color and Game Boy did this too, but I think you got much better games. I can call out playing between swimming matches, Advance Wars 2 with my friends. That was incredible. And like, just to be like, what are you gonna do? And like see him, and then see him move, I'm like, oh, you bitch. And like, it was so fun to have that, and being able to do it nowadays. It's it's Bluetooth, it's easy, it's internet and whatnot. But back then that was cool. And then you could race, like you could do arcade game swap offs. There was so many ways to play multiplayer, and we don't even need to talk about like Four Swords and Crystal Chronicles and how this connects to the GameCube.
Can we not talk about Crystal Chronicles?
I wanted to. I was just.
Hang on. Side tangent. Crystal Chronicles remake for PS4 really kind of sucks, but when you actually got it going with the Game Boy Advances, that game was incredible. Because it was super cool the way they did it. And I feel like I have in my mind like some amazing game experiences that I'll never forget, and I will never forget playing Four Swords with my friends with our Game Boy Advances. That was super fun.
The keyword is friends.
Like, I wanted to bring up both those games, and you already got it for me. Like, God bless. And specifically, it was the Four Swords, not the GameCube one, not that Four Swords.
Right.
The one that was
just Four Swords on the Game Boy. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like the thing tacked onto Link to the Past or whatever. That thing. Holy that was the most fun. Like, just getting and it was, you didn't need to have multiple cartridges. Last I checked, it was just you could just share that just one cartridge. That was so sick.
And it was in the time where it was just included with the game. It wasn't a stuff where you didn't have to pay for it. They're just like, yo, you want this? You don't even have to unlock it. You can just go down and play it.
And it was $40 Canadian instead of 60. Like,
what a steal. What a steal.
Oh my god. I'm just
can we have KBash a minute to calm down? He needs to.
Well, because I constantly whine.
You guys can't see it, but KBash, you are losing your shit right now.
I'm always whining about the state of modern games, and people are always like asking me like, "Did you buy this or that?" And I'm like, "I haven't bought a new release in like 8 months because it's a scam now." Just saying, like based on what I'm used to, which was good. Sorry, just to be clear.
Mic dropped.
Yeah. That's all.
But yeah, the people always wonder why we gush about the good old days in gaming. And I think in some part it makes us sound a little dated because I know there are a couple people in like our Discord when they talk about some of the games. Is this something that's actually good or is it nostalgia good? And I get what they're saying, but
it's
also some people I don't think get that you are also like programmed to this newer gameness where you've seen some of these things that we're talking about in the past, but as a full package back then, like everything was good. What like we'll talk about this much later on down the line, but like even thinking about low points for this system, it was really hard for me to think like when and what. But we'll talk about that later. What I want to talk about now maybe is like what were some IPs that got their start on the GBA, whether that was like just in the West or in general like fresh for everyone. And I feel like it's interesting because I'm mostly an RPGer, so I can hit the RPG card, but I'm sure you guys have some that are like I've never even heard of this game before. So yeah, why don't you guys start us out?
Go ahead, KBash. I see you're antsy.
Maybe I'll only list a couple and I'll jump back in. I just wanted to touch on specifically Golden Sun was relevant in its time because I think it was the first, if I'm not mistaken, like flagship major turn-based JRPG on the console. I could be wrong about that, but it was an early entry, and it was doing something that console didn't have. Yeah, or at least I think I'm right. And then I know you're gonna.
I do think you're right. Yeah.
Right. Advance Wars, absolutely whatever. Like cool competitor to Fire Emblem. Wait, no, it didn't. I lied. That's actually on the Super Famicom, I believe.
Well, so that's my thought too. Right. Like Fire Emblem and Advance Wars had earlier releases, but we didn't get them.
Yeah,
so
we didn't
I
see
think
them
it is kind of like that reboot. You know, like FE7 is the American, though not even American, but like the rest of the world's introduction to it. So that to me is like getting its start because if it had been a linear release like we had seen all of them, I bet FE7 would have been completely different. But they had to package it in a way that it was very safe for new audiences, which is why it was such a different take from something like FE6. So like, no, I'm with you. Like, I think saying that Fire Emblem was new for us makes it new, and I think saying Advance Wars was new makes it new, even if they had them in Japan at that time. Right. Like I'm with you.
Well, because like there's a caveat to every entry. Like I have like 5 games written down where it's like Boktai or Boktai, which is just basically like Metal Gear Solid with extras. If you really want to get spicy,
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's by Kojima. Mega Man Zero, which is just Mega Man with a new framework and like etc. Swordcraft Story, which is just the original RPG it's based on, but it's like a spin-off. Do you know what I mean?
What? No, what is that game?
I don't know that one. That's a deep cut.
Shoot. So there's a weird Game Boy Advance RPG called Summon Night Swordcraft Story, which is
Summon Night.
Right. It's based on Summon Night. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
yeah. And then I also really got into Super Mario RPG, like Superstar Saga, Mario and Luigi. That started there, and that was cool.
Yes.
And like I really wanted like I'm losing the name, Mario RPG, and then Paper Mario. I wanted like something like that, and I didn't get that really at all. But what I got, I still liked, and I thought that was pretty incredible.
I think what you're saying there too, like there were a lot of things that we anticipated what the next one was going to be.
Yeah.
And I don't think we were upset that what we wanted isn't like what we got. I know, like we brought up Final Fantasy Tactics earlier, and I know some people really rip on what it is, but I think if they actually played it and gave it a chance, they would understand that like the depth and complexity and narrative is there. You know, so. It may not be what you wanted, but like what we got was still a quality game. And the same thing what you said with Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Like I actually prefer that to Paper Mario just because I think it is a lot more dynamic and fun game. I think it really like hits what it is more to be like in the Mushroom Kingdom and whatnot. So that's great. Okay, Jason, now let's gush about those games.
Oh God, Metroid.
So like let's hit on some of the games series that like we'd seen in Nintendo's past. And now we're getting that reinvention because I'm with you. Fucking Castlevania as an RPG. Like, not everybody had Symphony of the Night. That was also like a dark, edgy game that, you know, younger selves might not have been interested in, but it's fucking Circle of the Moon. I'm also playing that right now on PlayStation has that collection. Wonderful introduction to that. Was my first Game Boy Advance game. And I was like, holy shit. Like, what blew my mind? So good.
I think it was my first like Game Boy Advance game too. The one I really liked when it first came out, but I remember getting it after just reading front to cover like the Nintendo Power news story about that game and being like, I have to have this. I need to know what these cards do when I mix them together. Like, I need to know. And it was incredible. And I don't know, man. Something about that game just made it feel super addictive. And I had only prior played Castlevania, the original one, and I'm like, this is nothing like that. I mean, aesthetically, it's kind of the same, but it's nothing like that. And it's in all the right ways. Like, it's what I want to see. I want to level up. I want to get items. I want to kill these enemies like this. I want to see this fun world and incredible music. It just delivered on everything. And it's just weird to look back at it and just see like that little game cartridge did so much. Like it pulled so much of like what I do for my gaming in general. And I don't know, man. There's something about that moment was just incredible. I'm sure that's kind of what Patrick was getting at too. Similar feeling.
Were there any other series that like this reinventing into this compact form?
This is a cultural thing, so maybe it's not, because we kind of talked about Fire Emblem. But I do want to bring up Fire Emblem because like it was the face on the GBA specifically that launched like 1,000 spriters careers. Like that game was, I don't know how to describe it. When you picked that shit up, if you played it before any other Fire Emblem title, because I did.
Same. Yeah.
And you watched those unbelievable animations, like how smooth they were. How fascinating it was. Like the characters were all different colors, and it was like, oh, I can level them up and get my squad. And then they got it, you know, as you went, it's like you could reclass them in sacred stones or turn them into different trees. Oh man. That series was fantastic. And it brought in a whole younger generation to like a weird fandom and made them interested in spriting as a concept. I know people personally who sprite because of those games. Like,
because and it's funny, it's so niche. Like, Fire Emblem is not for everybody. It's a very like niche series, but it is also just so impactful. I even think things like fucking Kirby's personality doubled.
Right,
like,
the animations.
Like his TV show pretty much came in tandem with Nightmare in Dreamland. Like, oh my god, and Pokemon got infinitely better, considering they thought that Silver was going to be the last game. Right. And then like for Ruby and Sapphire, which are I think arguably some of the best in the Pokemon series. Like I think that's peak Pokemon.
They definitely have like there. Hella character, like unique character. Like how the games are kind of like dark in a sense. Like I don't know how to describe it. They're like shadow or like the rain effects or whatever. And then the sound effects, like the actual sound chip is very like thummy. It's like so it like feels like a different cinematic experience cramped down into this handheld. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
There's nothing hits better than GBA music to me. Like we're currently doing a book group for Golden Sun, which KBash, if you're welcome to join in.
I will not be welcome there.
I know. I've seen your video.
Oh no!
I know.
Oh,
I know.
shit.
I've seen it. But I love when differing opinions come in and talk about it. But soundtrack alone, just turning on Golden Sun when it's the screen on like the sun coming up over the mountain and it's a golden sun, or like the main city, or right when the boulder is like coming down to the town, and like the sense of dread music, or the battle music's like, what is it about this system? Like when I think of video game music and what gets me going the most, it is Superstar Saga, it is Metroid, it is Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, it is Fire Emblem. Why is this system just so awesome? And
I don't want to give it to the I don't want to give it to the sound chip or any of that. I just want to give it to the composers they were hiring, because Motoi Sakuraba of Golden Sun, is a storied individual who incorporated like world music into his stuff. So it fit Golden Sun, this like world fantasy, because previously he had done like Valkyrie Profile, etc.
Also great tracks.
Right, and go to Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. If I'm not mistaken, that's the guy who did Valkyria Chronicles, and is he not the same guy, Sakamoto? I can't remember. But the tracks are so bombastic, but they sound exactly like those old era things, just on a new sound chip.
I think we have to talk about the sound chip, because I feel like that's exactly what you're getting at. Like, it's it is miles better than what was previously there.
Well, fair enough.
I mean, like, granted, you can still do great with any medium, and like, sure. I mean, Pokemon has classic songs. Metroid 2 has some incredible music. Like, I definitely love those things. But like, you're so much more limited, so you get artists that can effectively do it, and now you just have more tools for them, so they can create even more incredibly amazing music.
Right.
So I think that is a big factor to it, and it moves on from what you might say from like just the bleeps and bloops to like actually like layered sounds, and that's just so much more fun to like listen to.
Maybe
the bleeps and bloops can be okay, because
they can.
To me, one of the only other systems that has that same impact is the Sega Genesis, because it had that like special sound chip to it too, where like they only could do certain tones and certain tunes, but like it made it very special. And that's kind of how I feel about the GBA as well, where like I enjoy the soundtracks on that system more than I did the GameCube, which released during this time, the PlayStation 1, which released during this time, the Dreamcast. Like, I actually prefer a lot of the GBA tracks, but I don't know what, like,
someone doesn't love low frequencies.
What is it? Is it because like maybe GameCube console games are so much more large in scale, so maybe the team can focus more money, more research into a Game Boy game where it's cheaper?
It could be.
It doesn't take as long to develop, so they can focus on the music a little bit more. I wonder if maybe that's what.
Well, yeah, because a lot of soundtracks are, but and further to, because usually what I hear is people being like, the sound chip, the sound chip, but this is the first time I come somewhere and everyone is like all on board with
the sound chip, the sound
chip. So yeah, so I maybe it's just that you uniquely understand the medium, because this or whatever, or have appreciation for it, because these limited tools creating music is unique in the video game medium, I guess, compared to like now to modern orchestrations or whatever. They don't have the same unique flavor, right?
Yeah, good point.
Like people bitching about Dragon Quest XI and how, we didn't get a symphonic rendition of the game, but
it still has an incredible soundtrack.
Right.
It doesn't take away from what it is.
It's fine. But I mean, like, coming off of 8, where everything was orchestrated, I think kind of what you're saying, KBash, is when you have this full openness of you could do anything, there's lots of room for failure. But when you're in this like specific subset,
you're in this
you have to
zone
make
only.
the most of it. And for me, they made the most of it.
Right.
Like my expectations weren't super high, but like it's still. Oh man.
Yeah. I want to call out to, like, going back to the RPGaymer Discord and folks talking about like, is this just nostalgia or was it actually good? Like, I think we are in general talking about the games that are actually good, because there's some hot trash on the system that doesn't go that well. But like, when you look at the games that are solid, Advance Wars, Golden Sun, etc., they do also have the complete package of the soundtrack. I think it's worth noting that like, this doesn't apply to every game. Like, there are some shitty sounding games out there, but like, the good ones actually deliver on that full package.
Right, like, it's not like these are good, but don't pay attention to this. It's just like, these are good, period.
Don't go to like NSYNC, get them to the show and expect to get like a good soundtrack or whatever that game is called. Yeah, exactly.
And anyone, to be clear, not to be rude, but anyone under the impression that like, oh, this is inherently nostalgia, like, to a degree you're correct. It is because we are used to these things and they were cool back then. But to cast those things, like that potentiality, off for yourself, like, this can't be good because it's merely nostalgia. You'd be surprised what you can open yourself up to if you take the time to be vulnerable with it, or take the time with it. A lot of those games are incredible. truly.
Absolutely. And like
to
go with your point there, like my husband is not a gamer. And like we're starting to slowly dig into what he likes and what he doesn't like. And he loves Legends of Zelda, but believe it or not, his favorite Legends of Zelda of all of them is Minish Cap.
Nice.
That's great.
Which it's, I mean, like, it's a great game, but it's everything. I think maybe this is what it is. The GBA had games that were charming as fuck.
Yeah.
And you can't force charm. And a lot of newer games don't have charm.
Yeah.
You know, I think the Dragon Quest series to me is one of the only series that has charm. I think some of the Yakuza games, it sounds like they're developing that whole charm feel. And that's why I like Etrian, because Etrian is a huge charming series as well. But like there aren't many that actually have that charm. And
and certainly not in the West, to be clear. Like they're like way too focused on gritty, like
Yeah.
But it wasn't so like ooh-woo charm back then. It was like just like it was just like
it was soul.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. It had like a soul to it. So I think that's why this is so special. And I didn't have to sell Minish Cap to my husband. You know what I mean? It was just instantly he picked it up. It didn't matter. Like it's timeless. Like this game is just a fucking timeless game. And that's a wrap on part 1 of this week's episode. We'll be back next week with part 2 so you can hear the rest of our gaming-related shenanigans. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode of RPGaymer.